Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to be speaking with Emily Rose Yates from Sydney, Australia. She's an FP doer training out of FP Sydney, and she's going to be coming on today talking about her journey. She was a dancer from an early age, and she also developed some sort of injuries or an assortment of injuries as she got older. She is a mother of three, so she had some weaknesses in her core specifically from that, and then she was having trouble getting help with strengthening her core from traditional training. She was seeing a chiropractor that recommended FP, and then she started training down in FP Sydney and has gotten great results. So I'm excited to have her on here today. And yep, so she'll be coming on soon. Let me see if I can add her. All right, she's not here yet. All right, here she is.
Hi
Hey,
Ron,
Emily. Hey, good morning to
how
you.
are you? Good morning from Australia,
Yeah, I'm doing well. How are you?
Sydney, Australia. Yeah, good. I'm
All
good.
right.
Thanks so
So
much for
yeah,
having me on.
yeah. Tthanks for coming on. So
Yeah, nice to be here.
how long have you been doing FP?
2.5 years now.
Oh, okay. So yeah,
Mm,
it's been a little bit. Awesome.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you said you were a dancer growing up. What age did you start
Mm.
dancing?
So my mum was the local tap teacher in the Blue Mountains. I grew up about an hour and a half from Sydney. And so very early I started dancing in tap shoes and then saw the ballerinas next door in the hall and started doing ballet and ended up doing dance 5 nights a week, which was an amazing experience. But actually, now learning what I've learned from functional patterns is that actually we need to start implementing some safe practices into industries like that because now I'm dealing with a body that has been trained in key developmental stages with hypermobility, my ankles. I was talking to Mark actually, my trainer here in Sydney at FP Sydney, and I did a few things when I was starting to do boot camp and stuff like that before my children, and I actually like broke a toe. I had a baby. One of my youngest babies was sitting on a beanbag, and I saw him starting to roll at a birthday party, and I took off to run, and I actually broke a bone in my foot in two places because of
Wow.
this. Like tap dancing requires you to really have so much flexibility in your ankles and feet to get the sound right because it's essentially drumming with your feet, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just had so much flexibility, and I was just so incredibly excited to find Mark because I was on this cycle of I'd get back to exercise. Movement was always super important to me, and I realized how much it is for mental health. And having a background in naturopathy, I naturopathy is like an umbrella term for lots of things: nutrition, herbal medicine, counseling, and bringing the body back to its natural state. Which is why FP and me were like a duck to water because it's exactly what it's doing on a biomechanical basis.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it fascinates me. But having a
So you
background in naturopathy,
so
sorry,
sorry,
go.
so you were doing a little bit of tap dancing and you did ballet as well?
Loads
Is
of
that
tap, loads of
lots of tap?
ballet, loads of jazz ballet as well, which is, it promotes a whole bunch of flexibility, um, a little bit of strength for sure. And like, best years of my life, I absolutely love dancing. But now I think about it, I realize why my body is in the state that it is.
So you started at four. How long were you dancing for? Until what age?
17.
About 17. Were you
Yeah.
competitive at all with
It was
that?
a choice of whether I tried to, and look, we had, yeah, lots of really unsettling conversations about perhaps we would remove a bone in my feet that would make my point work better.
Wow,
And
just
my
for
mum was kind of like,
performance.
yeah, just for performance, like point work. So when you get to the end stages of ballet, you go on to point, and that was dancing on my toes. So how
Mm-hmm.
unnatural is that, really? So yeah, and my mum was kind of like, that is insane and ridiculous. I think we're gonna just love your ballet career, and then we're gonna just close that off here. And I went off and did instead of going professionally, I went and did grade 6, 7, and 8, which is a more relaxed version of keeping up my ballet, but not going into anything more professional.
I've seen some movies
Mm,
and they emphasize the feet where the toes are all
mm,
crunched up
mm-hmm.
and generally very, yeah, very degenerated for lack of a better word. Just a lot of problems I'm sure that those dancers have, and you
Mm.
guys start early, or
So
they generally
early.
start early like you did. So I'm sure by their 20s or 30s they probably have a
Fully
myriad of
degenerate.
different things going on with them,
Yep.
like you had. So anything else that you did while you were younger, or was it mainly dancing in terms of
No,
movement,
yeah.
sports?
Always in a dance hall. Yeah.
What was the dance? So then, yeah, you kind of did that up until you were an adult, and then you mentioned that you also started getting into a little bit of boot camp classes
Yeah.
and kind of traditional. What other stuff were you doing?
Boot camp, pump, hit classes, spin classes. It was kind of like
Hmm.
we have fitness first as a big gyms here, and that was kind of I just went to all the classes that they offered, and like I absolutely loved moving, but I was always dealing with some kind of niggle. I'd either have a hip issue or my ankle would be sore or my lower back would be really sore after the classes. And, um, I put up with it because I suppose I was in my 20s then. But I suppose and so, yeah, what became really obvious to me was this was not sustainable if I wanted to continue exercising into my 50s, 60s, 70s, which I 100% want to do. And I suppose at that epiphany of having children and realizing that like my third boy was two, no, still breastfeeding. So he was one when I broke my foot. So I had two children to take care of and a broken foot in a moon boot. And I was breastfeeding a baby. And I was just like,
Wow.
I can't afford to do this for my family.
At
But
what
it was always just
age,
this
at what age did you
please, yeah,
have your
Pat.
first child?
I was 29. I had Sonny, my eldest. Yeah.
29.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what got you into doing these boot camps? Was it just fitness in general?
It
And
was
what
just, yeah,
I'm curious,
yeah.
what made you decide boot camp versus maybe just going to the gym and working out, maybe using the machines, or versus taking on like a group class in terms of like a kickboxing, cardio, or something like that?
Yeah,
What was
I think the thing that I felt the most post a baby, and I did lots of walking in pregnancy, but that was probably all I could manage was a weakness. Like I wanted to feel strong again. And that's probably a sense of how I felt since my dancing days is that if you're not building strength and you've got flexibility and hypermobility,
Mhm.
then the strength is so important. So that was the craving, was to always just build that strength back. And you're lifting babies and lifting prams, and you can feel it if you're weak. So I always had a craving to kind of also to, you know, feel better mentally, but also and build core and stuff like that post the birth. So
Did you ever feel like you got some of that strength from those classes, what
look,
you were
I
looking
feel like
for?
I feel like what I know now, it's like you've taken the red pill and the blue pill when you start FP. And
It's hard to go
yes,
back
I would say,
and 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 uh and process how you thought about things, huh?
oh my God, it's huge, Rodney. It's for a couple of hours, but yeah, I would say yes, I felt good and I got stronger but I was constantly on a cycle of maybe every 4 to 6 weeks I would be injured. And then I'd have to have a break for a couple of weeks and I'd be like, oh, that's so annoying. And I felt quite annoyed at my body and I was like, what's wrong with me? How come all these people can just continue exercising and I'm injured all the time? But, I was kind of like, well, it's been a good year since I've had good high intensity exercise. Maybe that's my body just coming back to it. And it wasn't until the second and third child where it was like, right, this is crazy. And unfortunately, my mum was diagnosed with motor neuron disease, which is one of the most brutal conditions you've ever seen. And I cared for her towards the end stages of her life, which meant a lot of heavy lifting. And I would lift her and I'd feel my back go, and I'd be like, oh my God, I can't afford to do this. She needs me and I need to keep myself really, really strong. And I was seeing my chiropractor weekly, sometimes bi weekly, to try and keep myself together for that. And bless her soul, Felicity Young, she said to me, I think you should go and see this guy, Mark Labib, who's my FP trainer in Sydney.
Mhm.
And I said, yes, that's what I need. I need to be moving. I just felt like my body needed to actually strengthen by movement, not be put back together by a chiro every week. And the rest is
S- s-
history.
So you started seeing the Cairo at what point?
I've
Was
always
it was
seen
it when
chiros.
you've always seen them? Okay.
Yeah, I've always seen them, but I felt like I was there all the time. And Felicity agreed with me, bless her, my chiro. She was like, yeah, we got to do something else because the
And
treatments aren't holding. Your body is, back to normal by Monday from Friday. So it's like,
and you said
let's,
you had your first child around 29th, and you were still
yeah.
doing some of those classes. You were still trying to work
Mm,
out then. At
yeah.
what point did you or did your body tell you that you couldn't work out anymore, or were you still working out, I guess when you got into the like before you got into FP, or were you just seeing the chiropractor then?
I was walking, like walking with a girlfriend, maybe a Zumba class, but not anything strength based. And Mark is going to laugh at this when he watches the replay, but I felt like I couldn't trust my body because of such a long injury,
Mhm.
pattern of injuries that I needed to learn again how to do all of that.
So
I needed
yes,
guidance around weights and stuff like that. I just felt like I didn't want to just go and throw myself into a gym because I thought for sure that's going to end in injury.
yeah, so you had that cycle where you were trying to
Mm,
work out, trying to get stronger.
mm,
You kept getting injured. You would wait, then you would come back to it. Maybe you would get a
yep,
little stronger, but then you would get
yep,
injured again. And
yep,
at some point you realized that you couldn't do that anymore. So you
100%.
basically all that your body could take was walking.
Hmm.
Does that sound
Yep.
right? So
Hmm.
then you were doing that, and then you had to take care of your mother.
Mm,
And how was it like having to use your body? And you spent a lot
mm,
of time trying to get your body stronger,
mm,
right? And how
mm,
was it like trying to care for her and do these tasks and not being able to? And like you said,
mm.
you said you hurt
Oh,
your back, um,
yeah.
like get injured,
Mm,
or yeah.
yeah. That was the clincher for me. I was like, I have to do something else. And it felt like I was quite full up because I had three children. I would leave them for the weekend, do mum Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, go back to the kids, do all of that. And so it felt quite full, but I was like, if I don't have, I just had this feeling if I don't have time, if I don't find time to move and fix this problem, I'm not going to be able to help her at all because it was just, I remember one day she tumbled off the bed and I went to catch her and I almost couldn't catch her. She nearly hit the floor. And I was like, I need, I can't let that happen to her. Um, and yeah, I was desperate to build strength, but do it correctly. And I actually struggled to find, I've had functional trainers before, but if
Mhm.
you turn, like inverted commas, like after my firstborn, I went and did some functional training, which was, I suppose, better practice than what you'd find in Fitness First. But
Mhm.
still, I kind of knew there was something missing. And then when I found Mark, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is exactly what I need. It's like rebuilding my body from the inside out, learning how to breathe again. The other thing I didn't mention was that I started out in law after I finished school and I had a massive burnout at the age of 21. So there was always all that energy management part of it as well of like, don't burn yourself out. You've got three kids. Don't burn yourself out. You've got a sick mum. That's kind of like always on the back of my mind. But what I loved about Mark was when I was clearly, sleep deprived and very emotional from mum, he'd be like, breathe, lie down, breathe. He adapted the sessions to where my body and my nervous system was at, and
Mhm.
that's what I found really valuable because if I was thrown into anything really high intensity, I probably would have burnt out.
Yeah, we'll come back to this point.
Mm.
So you did try some sort of a alternative approach in terms of the functional trainer,
Yeah,
or did you do any
I
physiotherapy at
tried
all?
everything.
Yeah.
No, no, I definitely don't want to bag physios. I think that they have their place, but yeah, I did a bit of physio after I broke my foot, and I was kind of like, Not feeling it.
And then what kind of
Didn't make sense
stuff?
to me.
So you mentioned the high intensity and the boot camp
Mm,
type of training, and then the
mm.
functional trainer. What kind of things were different then, in terms of, was it just the intensity? Was he trying to, what was
Yeah, it was
it?
a
What was
she
it about it?
actually. She was
So
an
sorry, she.
amazing trainer. But and I suppose it was more like less isolations and more integrating movement with through the whole body rather than, I suppose that was, there were the concepts, but that was still very new. It was what was that style of training? Paul Check.
I see.
Yeah, yeah. And
So they were
that's more
so they were trying
flexibility.
to take a little bit more into account where you were
Yeah.
at and doing more full body movements.
Yeah. And yeah, strength through movement rather than just isolating muscle groups and that old school mentality.
So then what would you say was different
Mm,
with Mark? From the surface, it might seem that it's kind of the same intention, right? We're trying to build the
totally.
body as a system. We're
100%.
trying to adapt
Yeah.
to where you're at. You mentioned the breathing that he
Yeah.
had you do when you were probably more stressed instead of trying to stress your body out more.
Yeah.
What would you say, if you can put it into words, that was the
Yeah.
difference
I can.
between the functional trainer and functional patterns?
Um, and this is something I still try to get my head around myself, but the concepts and also Mark's unbelievable way of analyzing the body and analyzing like where we need to work. He's unbelievable at that. He just nails it every time. If I come in with something and it's not, FP is not a linear journey. It's not like you're just pain free, pain free, pain free. It's not like the unicorn. We kind of peeling off onion layers of old patterns. And once I fixed, I had issues with my right hip, and then my left glute started to flare up. And but what I've noticed is that my body is so much more resilient through that. It just bounces back. So
Mhm.
his concepts, his ability to kind of look at my body and look at how I'm holding myself and all the ways I walk, that analytical part of him is just so incredible. It blows my mind. And then his ability to apply the concepts. It sounds weird to someone that doesn't do FP. I don't know how to explain it, but there are certain concepts in biomechanics, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Rodney.
I'll
Certain
try.
concepts in biomechanics which you just have to nail. So it's about, functional patterns is about bringing you back to the way we should all move primarily, right? We should all be moving. We should all be able to run if we need to at the drop of a hat. We should all be able to throw something. We should all be able to, swim to a certain extent, but it's not swimming. And it's applying those concepts to my body in such an intricate way and very specifically. So if you talk about my language, being in naturopath, his treatment plans are spot on, like for what he sees in what's going on with me. And then we will work on one concept for probably, there's no specific timeline, but it feels around kind of like 2-3 months. We get that
Mhm.
nailed, and then something else unfolds. So, for example, we're working on my run at the moment and working on my arms and getting all the arms moving exactly as they should. And then I was like, oh, I barely have to move my legs. The rest of my body just moves. Once I've
Mhm.
like nailed that, it feels so um, like free energy when you get
Mhm.
the concepts right. And I did a class on the weekend, and you do two movements where it's like, oh my God, that was easy. It never feels easy, FP, that's not the right word, but that felt like it was
Efficient.
free flowing,
Yeah.
efficient, exactly, efficient energy. And it felt like the whole body was working together, and it actually felt like we were building that momentum through the body. And that's how I know I've nailed it.
So talk about a little bit of the beginning stages. How
Yeah.
you said you trained with Mark, he got referred to you, and how
Mm.
were those first few weeks of you training with them? What did you feel? What was it about the training
Yeah.
that kept you coming back?
Like, and I've got to be honest, because I think people are gonna. I was like, I'm gonna give this 3 months, and this is what I've said to other people. I haven't nailed my elevator pitch around functional patterns yet because it's such an incredible, long-winded. I could talk for hours on it, but um, for those 3 months, it felt slow and it felt like, okay, that wasn't like a huge workout because I was so used to like sweating it out at the gym. But then I would move better, just a little bit better. I'd notice things like even like bowel movements, and I'd notice that my nervous system was so much calmer. I'd noticed my mood, um, and it was just phenomenal for me in the grief period when we did actually end up losing mum. I just kept picking up more and more sessions. Mark was like, sometimes you can do too much FP, and I was like, no, 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 just let me do more because of the mood. It was just
Hmm.
incredible. So it was subtle and it was gentle, but it was so effective. And so it was a whole new concept change for me because it was like, train harder, get better results was the old mentality I suppose I'd picked up from, you just go harder.
Yep.
That's what you do. And it wasn't that at all. It was like, be more specific, listen to my cues, do what I'm telling you to do, and we'll get there. And then it was just like, oh my God, sold. Just kept feeling better. I was walking better. I could see the results. Even, I think my posture results, they're quite old. It wasn't very long that my posture started to change and I started to open up my chest more and I started to stand prouder. And then, all the rest of the lessons from FP started to drop in around all my neuroses. Me and Mark are laughing all the time in sessions around, I tend to make things, I feel like you approach functional patterns in the way that you approach life. And I'm learning so much about myself. And I actually think that I've functioned with really high levels of anxiety most of my life, but I didn't know that. And
Hmm.
I've seen therapists and I'm not like not exploring myself. That's part of my work. But FP really made me realize that my nervous system has been jacked up for a really long time. I think I've had high levels of anxiety since a child. And that I tend to make things, Mark will show me a movement and I will overcomplicate the shit out of it. And he's like, just do what I told you to do. I'm like, okay. And we just laugh because it's like, that's a pattern I do in life is overcomplicate things. Very, very simple things I can make really overcomplicated. Or I add my little flair to it. He's like, no, Janet Jackson, just do the movement. Like, um, yeah, so all different layers of myself, I feel like I'm learning about in the way that I approach the craft.
So going back to
Yeah,
you being a mother of three
yeah,
and having felt, you mentioned you felt some of the, I guess, repercussions of that with your
yeah.
core
Oh my
being
God.
a little weak. So, and relating it back to how you felt those first 3 months,
Mm.
is there anything that you felt different there in terms of how your core was connecting to your body versus,
Yep, yep,
or then with the training versus how you felt before? And
yep,
maybe if I think you said you felt like it was something that you didn't feel like you could fix. So yeah,
yeah,
how was that,
totally.
how was that like in the beginning?
Yeah, and so I'm, the mother of three boys, and they are incredibly active. And I was looking at them thinking, God, I hope I can keep up. Like, I want to have a running race with you without throwing my hip out. I want to, kick the football around with you until I'm 80. And I started to feel like, God, I'm old and I've had too many children and I've smashed my body and I'm not going to be able to do that. And I'm going to get teary. That's really confronting. Like, and now I can do that. I know that I can because I've found functional patterns. Like, I know that I'll be able to keep up with them. I'm 40. I've never felt fitter. I've never felt stronger. And I know that if I continue on, I'll be able to keep up with them. Sorry.
Have Would you say that they've noticed a difference
100%, yeah,
with you?
definitely. That like my youngest has an obsession with my trainer Mark, so he begs me all the time, and I don't take him all the time because it's my time. But he comes and he's like, "Mummy's so strong. Mummy's so strong." Like, and that looks hard, Mummy. You okay? I'm like, yeah, no, I'm okay because I do a bit of grunting with the hard bits. And my eldest is 35 kilos or something, and we have this joke of like still runs up. He's 11 and jumps on me, like full body weight jumps on me, and I've kind of go like, and we have this ongoing joke of like, Mummy's always going to make sure that I can do that. I can catch you.
That's a good measurement. It's not an
Totally.
easy
Yeah.
thing to do.
And he's like, I just hope he doesn't get to like 120 or something. Then he's
Yeah,
gonna
when
slap
he's
me, but we're gonna have to
or
renegotiate the
or
goal.
he's
But
25,
yeah,
20.
that might get a little inappropriate. But um, for now, I'm loving it, and that's I mean that's the gift, isn't it? Like some people are like, I don't know how you afford to do 3 sessions a week. I'm like, I can't afford not to,
Yeah.
basically.
So
So
now
that,
let's get more into how it helped you emotionally and
mm,
mentally.
mm,
First, let's get into the process with taking care of your mother.
mm.
If you don't mind getting into a little bit of detail with that, how was it
Yep,
like during, and how do you feel like it helped you not just physically with being able to do some task in terms of taking care of her, but also
yeah,
dealing with the emotional burden or weight of that.
yeah. Yeah, so first it was the physical, I suppose, that drove me into doing more was just not being able to catch her, not being able to lift her, not being able to slide her onto the wheelchair and needing to call one of the men in the family to help me do that. And sometimes they weren't around and that was scary. So it was like, okay, well, there's firstly that physical aspect. But then very soon after I started training with Mark, even in that 3 month period, I was able to just keep my mental health a lot more buoyant. I wasn't like you would think I was incredibly sad. I was losing my mum. It was very brutal. She motor neuron disease, like basically attacked her the base part of her brain, so she couldn't speak or eat for a really long time. Hadn't heard her voice in a really long time.
Wow.
So she was nonverbal, and she had to write everything out. So there was a lot of frustration for her. Very hard on the carers. Very hard on her. It's just I I just can't even believe it exists, quite honestly. It's the most brutal condition I've ever experienced. And so then I got to a point where I was doing FP. I think I started with Mark, yeah, about 3 months before she passed away. And then me and my brother were doing around the clock, and my dad, around the clock medicating her just to keep her sedated because it gets to the point where the body just completely shuts down. Her breathing was very labored. And so we had to do 3 hourly medications to keep her sedated. It was basically palliative care. And I remember feeling, so incredibly sad, but I felt like, this is, like I could feel worse. It was a feeling of like, I'm still able to like be grateful and see the joy in life. And it was really interesting. And I was also using my breathing techniques in the back room that Mark had taught me to regulate my nervous system, because obviously that's a state in time in my life where I would feel completely dysregulated. I was also away from my kids and I missed them a lot. By then it was, round the clock, 24-hour care. So I was able to use the techniques and I was able to just get that lift and that serotonin pumping again and just come back to it with a really fresh um, body and mind. And that was really just the breathing. I wasn't really even doing much more movement because I felt quite physically exhausted. Um, and then after, when we lost mum, I obviously was incredibly sad and still am grieving for her massively. But the more FP I do, the more I can keep myself above water, my head above water, for myself and for my kids and for my patients. And I just keep picking up more sessions. I'm
And
like, I'll drop them down. I promise, Mark, I'll do more therapy and I'll drop them down. But it just, yeah, it's definitely kept me buoyant.
yeah, and in terms of the anxiety that you mentioned as well, that you
Yeah,
have kind of like a high functioning
yeah.
anxiety, how have you felt that that's helped you, and what other areas of life have you felt that maybe you were struggling? You mentioned you did some therapy, but you were still struggling with certain things, and how
Yeah.
is it how are those things now, and how have they changed?
I would say my anxiety would be like 75% less. Like it's still around, and what I what I've noticed in my system since I've been doing FP is my bounce back. So it's like something really stressful might happen. or I'll be sleep deprived for a couple of nights. One of the kids is sick, something like that. That's a week recovery for me generally. But now I'm noticing, and it's really only a couple of years of doing FP, it wasn't immediate, but now I'm noticing my ability to bounce back from something like that and regulate myself is a lot faster. And Mark gave me heart math for my birthday, which I absolutely love as well. So going back to that breathing, going back to that, um, just I feel like I've got the tools as well. I'm like, right, I know what to do here when I'm peaking with my anxiety. But generally in my system, that is so much less,
I think that's a great
like
point
so much
that
less.
when you say that it's not that you're just able to cope with the stress,
Yeah,
but you're being able to come back from it as well.
yeah,
When I did a little bit of meditating back in the day,
yeah,
and whenever you hear people that meditate or do any sort of practice like that, they it doesn't seem like it helps them in that way. Like it doesn't seem like it's building resiliency.
no,
It almost just seems like it's more of a very low term thing or a
mm,
temporary band-aid, but
yeah,
it doesn't really give you um, that yeah, that ability to be more resilient because it's a whole body thing, right? When you're experiencing something
100%. It's a
that's
whole
stressful,
body thing.
your
Yeah,
fascia, your muscles are involved,
yeah,
your digestion. There's a lot
your
of the
reproductive
different things
system,
that happen exactly.
100%.
So with FP, to me, it seems like we're again treating the system. So
Mm,
even though those things are going to happen,
mm,
we're building the resilience and we're
mm,
creating more of an ability to bounce back. So I think
mm.
that was a great point.
Yeah, and like, I've zero against meditation. I'm a meditator. I've done meditation all my life, but again, it's like the red pill, red pill, blue pill thing of like, but if we're really going to treat the body holistically, then the whole body needs to be involved, not just the mind. Like, let's not just focus there. Let's focus on integrating the whole body into this relaxation experience. And that requires movement
Yep.
or stillness or breathing so it's like that whole holistic part of that is that the whole body needs to be involved in that. We don't just isolate things.
Yeah,
Um,
and breathing could be isolated. So
true.
yeah.
The other thing that, and I feel like I want to prescribe this to people all the time. And Mark saying, come become a trainer, become a trainer. I don't know if I want to do that necessarily, but I want to anyway. Um, but one of the things I noticed when with the movements that we're doing is the ability to bring microcirculation into the uterus, into the bowel, into all of those areas I'm treating naturopathically. So I've got a practice full of people with endometriosis, PCOS, infertility, and I wonder if it's all, or if a lot of it, a large part of it, is because of the nervous system supply, the fascia, the microcirculation. They're all areas that can become stagnant very quickly and easily when your posture's out and when you're not
Mhm.
moving correctly and we don't have any core strength. But obviously, food comes into it, and that's part that that's part of what I treat with. But I feel like now you can't just do the food, you've got to get the actual biomechanics working again down there. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. So
that over. Mm,
go ahead.
there you go.
So yeah, going into your profession as a naturopath, you mentioned
Yeah.
that you had was it study of nutrition? What, can you describe it one more time for us?
Yeah. So it's a Bachelor of Health Sciences um, through university, and then you major in naturopathy. And what that means is you do a diploma in nutrition, advanced nutrition, herbal medicine, homeopathy, and we do a little bit of counseling. But it's just we couldn't say we're counselors. It's just more had to learn to be an active listener.
Hmm.
So it's an umbrella term for a whole bunch of, you know, natural ways of treating the body.
Hmm. So trying to stay away from like, okay, just take an ibuprofen for this and
100%.
go to the
Yep.
doctor and okay.
Maybe
And
drink a bit more water for your
right.
headaches instead of, how much water you're drinking. the foundations are obviously movement, water, connection to nature, connection to the others, stress management, you know, all the things that, and that's
Yeah.
all FP as well, which is why
Yeah,
I love
so how would you
that
feel
umbrella.
that FP has become a bigger part of how you said you want to prescribe it. Do you
Yeah,
tend to think about the things that you do within your profession differently as well? Like kind of
100%.
talking about first principles thinking and kind of thinking critically with how we're aligning to nature and
Mm,
that sort of thing.
yep. And am, I think when we first chatted, I mentioned this. I'm kind of questioning what comes first. Like, so I talk about, our neuroses or our nervous system and the way it's all made up. And then Mark and I were talking about this really interesting study where this woman had found that hypermobility actually increases the level of anxiety in someone's system.
Hmm.
So it's like, what comes first? Here I am treating anxiety with magnesium and B vitamins and, all the different ways that I do it depending on the person. But I'm like, this person needs to move properly. Don't take any of my things. Go and move. Like, so I'm having a bit of like an existential crisis with my work around, and what came first? Was it the anxiety and then the nervous system threw off and the biomechanics are now all out? Or is it the biomechanics which will fix the anxiety? So
Yeah,
it's like,
and it could be both. And I think yeah,
totally.
I think the
100%.
biomechanics is it's quite a fundamental aspect that it's not being addressed
Mm,
to the extent
definitely.
that at least to the extent that functional patterns is trying to address it.
100%.
But yeah, but there's still, we still focus on getting outside. We still focus on eating, changing the way
Mm,
we eat, our sleep. So
screen
yeah,
free. Yep.
so trying to put together as many parts of the whole. Um,
Mm,
yeah, it just to us at least, it seems like the biomechanics are huge, if not one of the most fundamental aspects of it.
100%.
Awesome. So
100%.
yeah, so again, thank you for coming on. Anything else that you
It's a
might want to add
pleasure.
that we missed?
I wanted to say, if anyone, like, if this has piqued your interest in any way, I think it's just so important to give. This is my spiel. I've sent so many patients and friends and family. My brother's now seeing a trainer in Penrith. He's an interesting story actually. He's pretty much got two bulging discs and he was in pain constantly. And I'd said, you need to do FP, you need to do FP, you need to do FP for about a year. And he wasn't. He was doing physio, chiros, and he was getting, intermittent relief and stuff like that. And then he called me in a real crisis one day, and I said, I'm going to say it one more time, and I'm not going to mention it again. You need to stop seeing everybody else, and you need to go and move. Because he's made up like me, right? I was like, your nervous system will thank you forever. In about 2 to 3 weeks, with some releases, unbelievable. He couldn't walk from his front door to his car without being in pain. 2 to 3 weeks of exercises with this amazing trainer, Steve, in Penrith, and some fascia release. He's like, I'm pain free. And like, again, not linear. He's had some flares and they've worked through it, but it's like, it's
Yeah,
insane.
it's a good start.
And I said to him, this reminds me of my conversation, give it 3 to 6 months. Don't think about it, just commit to 3 to 6 months because then you'll know if it's for you or not. And I know that sounds like a big commitment, but if you're injured or you're in pain and you don't have the quality of the life that you deserve, give it that much time, you will not be disappointed. Or you'll be like, that wasn't for me. And that's cool too. It's not, perhaps not the answer to everything, but I would put my children on the fact that you'd get improvements.
Yeah,
So it's
and we
like,
yeah, what we seem to
mm,
or what we tend to see is being the last stop for people. So generally when they commit and when
100%.
they give it some time, it usually is the last stop. And I think uh,
Mm,
it seems like the talks that we've been doing have helped. So I'm sure
mm.
your story is going to help a lot of
Yeah, I
people.
hope
When they
so.
hear it, they're gonna relate to you, and you had, I'm sure it's not easy to commit some time when you have um, three kids and when you have
Mm,
other responsibilities, like when you were taking care of your mother. So there's
mm,
always things that might seem like they need to take priority,
mm.
but for me at least, health should be the very first thing, and
100%.
then if you can at least squeeze it in, then you'll see. Like you said, you kind of
Mm,
go more now because you realize that it gives
yep,
you more
yep.
time and it helps you
Well,
with everything else.
yeah, I'm better for everyone. I'm better in the work that I do. I'm better for my family. I'm better for my kids. And, some people are like, that's so expensive. I'm like, I can't afford not to. I actually can't afford not to. Being injured and not being able to walk outside with my kids or do all the tasks that I do for them that show them that I love them, that's worse. That costs the earth.
It'll cost more.
So it's
Yep.
like you've gotta and I think with FP it's learning the language initially as well. Like I remember, Mark's yelling at me, anterior, posterior, and I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like it's pretty full on. And so you've really got to give it time to just learn and let it integrate and just move at your own pace with all of that so that you're not that that is not skewing your experience of that. You've just got to give it 3 months and just see how you go.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully, people listen to you
Yeah.
and we get more people
Yes,
feeling better
that's
and getting
my
out of
that's
pain.
my plan.
That's our plan as well. All right, Emily. Well, thank you so much for
All
coming
right, thank
on. I really
you. Thanks
appreciate
so
it.
much.
Yep. I hope you have a good rest of your day. I know you're gonna
100%. You
go
too. Oh, that's
train right
right.
now,
Hi, Mark.
right?
Yeah, I'm going
You're gonna
to.
do
Yeah,
some
I've finished
training.
my session with Mark back to 9. So drop the kids at
Awesome.
school and go and see Mark.
Awesome.
All
Okay.
right.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. Catch you in the next
No
one.
problems.
Bye.
Bye.